Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled homeowner association claimed that my rural farm property is now public HOA property and then invited HOA members to trespass on my property to use my pool. I am not even part of this HOA. Here is what happened. I don't mean to come off as harsh, but where I live used to be a lot better before people started buying up properties and trying to turn it into a suburban community. I live in the middle of nowhere and it used to be all farms and ranches out here. Now I am one of about 5 left and I didn't have one of the larger properties to begin with. The only thing that makes my property different than a lot of other rural areas is that I have a pool. It was the only thing my wife really wanted for the longest time, so I decided to say, screw it, and have one built in an area we were not using too much. It's not some crazy giant pool like a mansion would have, but it's big enough to swim around and have a good time. Hell, it turned out to be great when we wanted to have people over, because it's hot out here and a pool is a nice way to cool off. Along with all the city people came an HOA and I did not pay them enough mind to be interested. They could do whatever they wanted, but I was just gonna live the same way I did for my entire life. Before they decided to pull a huge stunt, I had never met or spoken to a single member of their board, much less their president. That changed when they decided to pick a fight with me, thinking that they had any chance of winning. They liked my pool and I knew a lot of people were jealous because they did not have the space for one like I did. One Saturday when I saw about 80 people on my property and in my pool, I had no clue what was going on. I saw smoke from some grills that were brought in and I asked the first person I saw what was going on. They told me the HOA was throwing a party and showed me a flyer they handed out to the members. I would attach a photo, but it's been long thrown out by now. It was just saying the date and location of a pool party. I asked him to point out an HOA member and I got lucky that the man I was led to happened to be the president of the HOA. Me, who do you think you are, inviting all of these people onto my property? President, I'm just hosting a party for our wonderful HOA members. Of which you are not one, so I need to ask you to leave actually. Me? Leave? Me? You're the ones trespassing on my property and swimming in my damn pool. If you ask me, I should have you all arrested or come back here with my shotgun and kick you all out myself. President, this is not your property. This area belongs to the HOA and we have every right to host a party for the members. If you show up with a gun here, I promise that you will never see life outside of prison again. We have good lawyers. I went back to my house and called the police for somebody to come down here. When a couple cops arrived, I explained that it was my property and I already asked the president to make everybody leave. Unlike the city people, the police have been around a long time and knew the land was mine. They forced everybody to leave and the HOA president was furious about it. He was ranting about how this was HOA property and would sue the entire police department for making him get off his own land. They told him they knew the land was mine and he could either leave now or be arrested, then try to prove to a judge that the land belonged to the HOA. That shut him up really fast and he finally left the property, but not before giving me a dirty look that I understand to mean this was not over. I fully expected him to try and do some payback despite the fact that I actually didn't do anything wrong. I was not scared of him or anything he would try to do to me. If he wanted to fight over the land in court, I would be more than happy to make him look stupid. Instead though, he turned to show that he was stupid all on his own with what he did next. I guess his idea was that if the HOA could not steal my pool, then I was not allowed to have it either. It's what I call preschool logic when a kid breaks a toy that he gets told that he has to share. He wanted to destroy my pool, but what he did ended up having the potential of destroying everything. So when I was not around, he snuck onto my property and poured a bunch of gasoline in the pool. I'm talking about the pool, the filter, the area around it, etc. With the cost of gasoline, I'm shocked he didn't do something cheaper. Regardless of the financial aspect, he lit the entire thing on fire once he was done. Of course, from a safe distance where he would not get totally burned. The fire department had to rush in because it was spreading onto the grass and towards crops as well as my home. Putting it out was not that easy because of how much was in the pool and it was still burning. It took a long time, but they managed to get it out before giving me the third degree about how dangerous it was. I told them that I did not start a fire in my own property, but I sure as hell had an idea of who did. I don't have fancy cameras, but I do have a couple of them for security, and one managed to pick up the HOA president pouring the gasoline on my property. It was not HD quality, but it was good enough for an identification and to get him arrested for arson and destruction of property. At this point, the HOA did not even matter because he was the one that did this thing by himself. That was until he made it about the HOA to try and get himself their good lawyer to save him from jail. Video evidence is hard to talk your way out of, but he had an excuse for everything. Once again claiming the land was HOA property and he had to burn it because he saw me put some dangerous chemicals that would kill people if they walked on it. Needing to prove who owned the property just dragged things out and made it worse for him in the end. He was getting sent to prison for his crimes, but since he got the HOA involved, they had a mess to deal with as well. I wanted money for the damage to my land and pool. It would not be safe to use until it was drained, all the parts replaced and tested to make sure there's no residual gasoline that can catch fire again. I was granted the money from the HOA, but it still was not good enough for me. I petitioned the courts to force the HOA to shut down due to misuse of power by trespassing on my property for the party. That was also granted, so now the HOA was being shut down and their precious president being sent to prison. And the next one is a petty revenge story. Sarah and I became friends when I moved to the city for college. I used the term friends loosely, I was still young and ignorant and had yet to learn that nice is not synonymous with kind. The friendship officially ended when she was promoted at work. The celebratory dinner with our friend group, she announced that she wouldn't be able to spend time with us going forward. Being promoted meant she had to spend more time with important people. A few people laughed, but she reiterated, "I'm not joking, I like you guys, but I'm very important now. I cannot keep associating with people I know from college." I was not disappointed and this gave me a convenient questions-free exit. After graduation, Sarah's parents bought a condo for her. She adopted a kitten and had it declawed because her furniture is more important and declawing does not hurt cats. She eventually dropped the cat off with her parents for two reasons. In her own words, she is very important and needs to network more, and now that she worked hard for her degree and home ownership, she wanted a spouse. Nobody wants to date a woman with cats, so Etta, the cat, has to live with my parents. She said, "It's not a big deal. Cats are not smart anyways. She won't even remember me." Well, not even a year later, a friend who hate follows her on social media saw a post. Sarah found the perfect new addition to the family. She and her boyfriend love cats, so they submitted an application for a kitten at the local rescue. I called the rescue during my lunch break and gave them the information I had, that she declaws her cats, rehomed her previous one because it did not fit with her lifestyle. I said that I could not in good conscience have this knowledge and at least let them know. Sarah did not end up getting the kitten, nor any other kitten from that rescue. And well, I'm realistic, so I can imagine her next steps. At least I know I thwarted this attempt. And here, Ripe stars, that is so sad. People like that definitely should not have cats. Also, what kind of douchebag declaws their cats? Either way, if you have enjoyed the stories until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much, and the next one is a pro-revenge story. So my birthday is coming up and I decided to treat myself to a new pair of sneakers. Been having a good year at my job and I don't really spend much on myself. I've always wanted a pair of Yeezys, so I got online and found a pair at a really good price. When I was messaging the seller, he asked if I would be willing to not pay through the site to avoid seller fees and he would sell it even cheaper. He even offered to take the payment through Chase, which I assume would have me protected, so we used the Zelle Quick Pay feature. Before I sent the money, he even sent me a picture of the sneakers and pictures of several receipts from the UPS and USPS showing that he sells several pairs of sneakers and actually ships them usually. I agree, and we begin a conversation on IG. The guy seems pretty legit, doesn't look like he needs to scam people, he seems legit enough. So I sent him the funds thinking I just got a deal. However, no response after the funds are sent, a day goes by with no answers. At this point I chalked it up to a loss and learned my lesson. Should have spent the extra $40 and got it from a verified site. Also, don't use Zelle. Chase told me because I used Quick Pay, there's nothing they could do except contact the police, and they had no fraud protection for Zelle. Even though I paid it through Chase, it turns out Zelle is a scammer's best friend. Only trust PayPal. At that point I'm more pissed and I allowed myself to get scammed, not so much about the money, I'll survive, but this is when I go into full 007 mode and start my revenge. I find the guy on Facebook and put his name into the white pages and find his phone number and I call it. The kid still lives with his parents, so I figure they should know what's going on. I speak with his mom and she has no idea what's going on, but that he is not home. I said unless you want cops at your door, he better call me. 5 minutes later, I get a restricted call. It is him. He has no idea who I am and had not been speaking with me at all. Actually, it turns out his phone was stolen on New Year's Eve and did not have his IG account locked or his Venmo. The guy who stole his phone used his Gmail account and IG to post shoes and then never sent any of them. Happened to a bunch of people in a few days, but this is where the guy effed up. The real guy tracked the Venmo account and matched it to a very similar FB and IG account name. So I decided to throw a dart in the dark and send a picture of the FB account to the guy who scammed me. First response, "Where did you get that?" For whatever reason, the scammer decided to text me from his real number at that point. Now I have his number. I now decided to BS and told him that the Chase fraud specialist is waiting for me to send pictures of the receipts he sent me. I told him they could use the very visible tracking numbers to find the seller and their billing info since it was a debit transaction, and that I now had FB photos of him and a name and number. I told him that the real person told me there was an active police investigation and this was the info they needed. I started demanding my money back or I would turn everything over, and in 5 minutes I had all my cash back. He made me promise to delete everything if he sent it all back. I even gave him some answers about the fake conversation I had with Chase, and he was trying to find out what I/they knew, which was everything. The best part was he also used his personal account to send the money back, which shows his real name, which had a slightly different one on Facebook. The account would also have all of his billing info. He was not a very good scammer. All of the accounts were deleted and I've been blocked. Doesn't matter though, I sent everything to the poor guy this scammer has been destroying. The poor guy said it's been the worst 4 days of his life, constant calls and emails about being scammed. Luckily, Venmo covered all the money that the scammer transferred out of his account, but he also wants revenge. Hopefully he will get it now, since we know now exactly who it is. I did go through a verified site and purchased the shoes for real with no worries. I had to have them on principle at that point. And the next one is an Am I the A-Hold story. I, 27 male, am a general manager at a fast food restaurant, not gonna say which because I don't want to get in trouble, with my assistant manager Sophie, 23 female. Me and Sophie get along pretty well, we joke fight about stuff all the time and like to prank each other a lot. Things like prank calls or making the other do fake orders or write fake surveys about the other, or splashing soda on the other. We ended up working together a lot since we get a bunch of call-outs, especially at night, and Sophie likes to pick up extra hours. We have both climbed up in the couple years that we have worked there and have a good relationship. When it's dead, Sophie likes to write fan fiction on her phone, which I sometimes tease her about. And a while back, I made Sophie read me a line that she was writing and we were making jokes about it. Last week, I suddenly remembered the fanfiction again and decided to try and find it. I remembered the line she had read to me and was able to search for it online using quotation marks. I'm not gonna say which show it's from because I don't want anyone to find it, but it was shocking to read. Pretty much the two characters in it worked at a fast food chain and ended up falling in love. It got pretty graphic at some parts too. The main character was essentially a representation of Sophie and the love interest was basically me. I mean, right down to copying conversations that we had at work. He even had a wife that he was cheating on to be with her. I'm married, but I would never do such a thing. Anyway, a few nights ago, Sophie and the rest of the team threw a party to celebrate a couple of wins, and of course Sophie pranked me by shoving a cupcake in my face. So I remembered what I read. I thought it would be a good prank, so I pulled up the fanfiction on my phone and started to read it. When she realized what I was reading, Sophie's eyes started to tear up, which I was not expecting. The rest of the team was joking around with her, but she ran out of the party. Now she's not showing up to her shifts or answering my calls and texts. It's weird that Sophie's acting like this since she usually loves pranks and stuff, so now I'm wondering if I took it too far. Although I also feel like she shouldn't have been writing those things about me and her too in the first place. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is OP the a-hole or not? People on Reddit said, "You're the a-hole, that was not a prank, you intentionally embarrassed her in front of people." A prank is something silly when you both laugh together. This was mean-spirited and it humiliated her. You should apologize. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole, holy crap. She shoves a cupcake in your face and you basically revenge PORN her through her fantasy fanfiction. You need to prepare a lawyer. And now we got an update to the story. It reads like this. A lot of you advised that I leave Sophie alone, which I did, but what surprised me is that she actually came into work to her next scheduled shift after that post went up. I was intending on leaving her alone, but she approached me first and we sat in the back room and had a discussion. I was ready for her to hand in her resignation or talk about taking this to higher-ups as some of you had said, but instead she apologized to me. She said that she was sorry for writing fanfiction at work and for including personal stories. She admitted that the character was about me after all. After reading all of your comments, I was beginning to think that our time together was just inspiration, but she ended up confessing to me. I told Sophie that she had no reason to be sorry and that I had to be responsible for my actions. I acted inappropriately with her at work and allowed these feelings to develop instead of setting boundaries. I also humiliated her and read her diary in front of the whole class, and I deeply apologized. She actually ended up laughing about it, but I do admit that it felt kind of like she was taking the higher ground and trying not to seem that hurt by it. I asked her if she wanted to transfer to a different location, and she said no. She also said she wasn't looking for a new job. I had a separate talk with the rest of the team about what happened, and she joked around with them. Sophie's maturity taught me a lot about myself and things I need to work on, so that's what I've been doing. She and the rest of the team still like to do pranks, but I stay out of it now. As a manager, I've got to be in control and focus on the success of the restaurant. Sophie and I are on good terms again, but we've established clear boundaries, and it seems that she is starting to move on. Thank you all again for helping me realize that I am in the a-hole here. And the next one is titled HOA Board Campaign to Do Nothing. I lived in a small 18-house neighborhood that had a deed-restricted HOA. We had a minimal common area along the main entry street that needed maintenance and some drainage infrastructure that needed to be maintained. Not much work had to be done at all. No one wanted to be on the board, so I ran for the board with the slogan, "I will do nothing more than is legally required to fulfill the legal requirements of the HOA." This slogan was enough to get 4 more neighbors to run with the same slogan. We had the typical committees, all with the same members and with the same idea: leave everyone alone, fulfill our legal obligations and move on. I was walking down the street one day and was accosted by a neighbor who said, "You don't deserve to be president." I replied, "You are right, I don't deserve it." This really set her off, so she started yelling at me about all the things I should be doing, planting a specific kind of flower, forcing her neighbors to do things unregulated by the HOA, etc. So I invited her to run for president. I told her that she could submit a petition calling for a special election, and I could guarantee that everyone on the board would sign it and probably vote for her to take on the job. This of course just infuriated her, so she started writing letters to the board complaining about everything. We ignored the letters, which technically was a mistake. Our HOA documents required all letters to receive a response. She continued to send letters that had nothing to do with the HOA, so we crafted a malicious compliance response that read like the following. "Thank you for your letter to the HOA board. After careful consideration, we have decided to ignore it." We then included instructions on how to call for a special election to have us kicked off the board and promised her the support of all board members if she chose to circulate the required petition. She sold her house and moved. Our board continued with the same philosophy for the 12 years I lived there, nothing more than legally required, and leave everyone the hell alone. We would hold a homeowners meeting once a year, which was nothing more than a potluck dinner. We had to invite someone from the compliance company who worked for us to make sure we covered everything required for our annual meeting and reporting, and we would always have an agenda item under new business. Does everyone promise to be a reasonable adult? I have moved to a new 14-house neighborhood with an HOA. I haven't yet decided if I will run for the board. Edit to answer a common question: why not dissolve the HOA? An HOA was required for a planned community, which was the type of community in which we lived. Planned communities are built under specific laws and regulations, and one of the requirements is that they have an HOA. In order to disband or form an HOA, you have to have unanimity of all property owners. Typically, the HOA is created by the builder, so when people buy the house in a planned community, they are buying into the HOA. It is a deed restriction. Assuming we could get the unanimity required to disband the HOA, we would still have the problem that the HOA as a legal corporation owned common areas, property owned equally by all homeowners, and we had common infrastructure, a drainage system. Someone would have had to have been able to take ownership of that property, and the resulting liability pretty much an impossibility. That drainage system only benefited the homeowners, and it made sense that it be owned by the community, thus the need for the HOA. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.